Removing and replacing parts. HP EliteOne 800 G4 Touch and Non-Touch AiO Desktop PC. How to replace the cable cover. Removal.
Slide each of the locking latches for the cable cover to the center unlocked position. Pull the cable cover off of the unit.
Replacement.
Cable cover has 2 tabs at the top and 2 tabs at the bottom that fit into slots on the rear of the PC. To replace the cable cover, align the tabs into their slots. Slide each of the locking latches for the cable cover into the outside locked position. Replace the 2 Torx 15 security screws for the cable cover if they were installed at removal.
How to replace the stand.
To remove the stand, first place the unit face down on a soft, flat surface. Remove the cable cover.
Removal.
Press up on the latch to release the top part of the stand from the rear of the unit, and pull the stand assembly away from the unit.
Replacement.
The top of the stand has 2 metal tabs that fit into 2 slots on the rear of the PC. To replace the stand, align the tabs into their slots and press the rest of the top of the stand down until the latch snaps into place.
How to replace the rear cover.
To remove the rear cover, first remove the cable cover and the stand.
Removal.
Use your fingers to grasp the rear cover on its center edges near the cable well and carefully pry up and remove the rear cover from the unit.
Replacement.
The rear cover has several tabs on the inside perimeter that fit over tabs on the LCD panel assembly. To replace the rear cover, align the rear cover over the LCD panel assembly and press all the tabs firmly until the rear cover has completely snapped into place.
How to replace the webcam. Before you begin, remove the cable cover, the stand, and the rear cover. Removal. Remove the 3 Torx 15 screws that hold the plastic webcam cover in place. Lift the plastic cover from the webcam module. Disconnect the webcam cable from the motherboard. Route the webcam cable out from the cable guides. Remove the 4 smaller Phillips head screws. Gently remove the webcam. Important: if you now intend to also remove the webcam assembly, please review the webcam assembly video before proceeding. Replacement. Gently slide the webcam into the webcam assembly. Replace the 4 smaller Phillips head screws. Route the webcam cable through the cable guides. Reconnect the webcam cable to the motherboard. Place the plastic cover on the webcam module. Replace the 3 Torx 15 screws to secure the webcam to the webcam assembly. How to replace the system memory.
To remove system memory, first remove the cable cover, the stand, and the rear cover.
Removal.
To remove the SO-DIMM memory module, gently pull out on the retaining lever on each side of the module. The module will pop up from its socket. Pull the memory module out of the socket.
Replacement.
There is a small notch on one side of each SO-DIMM memory module that fits over a small tab on one side of each SO-DIMM socket. To replace an SO-DIMM memory module, angle the module to about 30 degrees into its socket, engaging the notch into its socket tab. Press the module down into place until the retaining levers snap into position over the sides of the module.
How to replace the hard disk drive.
To remove the hard drive, first remove the cable cover, the stand, and the rear cover.
Removal.
Pull out on the retaining latch for the hard drive cage, and firmly slide the hard drive out to the side to disengage it from its connector. Pull the hard drive out of the unit.
Replacement.
If replacing the hard drive, detach the 4 shock-mounted Phillips No. 1 guide screws on the sides of the drive and reserve. To install a new hard drive, attach the 4 reserved shock-mounted Phillips No. 1 screws to the sides of the new hard drive. The guide screws slide into slots on the hard drive cage on the PC. To replace the hard drive into the unit, align the 4 screws over their slots, pulling out on the retaining latch as necessary. Slide the hard drive towards the center of the unit until it is completely engaged with its connector.
How to replace the hard drive cage.
To remove the hard drive cage, first remove the cable cover, the stand, the rear cover, and the hard drive.
Removal.
Disengage the nearby power supply connector from its nearby cable guides on the optical drive cage. Detach the single Torx 15 screw that secures the hard drive cage in the unit. Slide the hard drive cage out to the side, then remove it from the unit.
Replacement.
There are 4 tabs on the optical drive cage that fit into 4 slots on the hard drive cage. To replace the hard drive cage, align the slots over the tabs, and then slide the cage towards the center of the unit. Secure the cage to the unit with its Torx 15 screw. Replace the nearby power supply connector into its guides on the optical drive cage.
How to replace the optical drive.
To remove the optical drive, first remove the cable cover, the stand, and the rear cover.
Removal.
There are 2 parts of the green retaining latch for the optical drive that must be pushed in opposite directions to remove the optical drive. First, push up on the middle of the latch through the access hole on the optical drive cage. While holding the middle of the latch up, push the rear tab down and use it to push the optical drive out the side of the cage.
Replacement.
If you are installing a new optical drive, pull the green drive release latch off the optical drive. Insert a straightened paper clip or other similar tool into the force eject hole on the optical drive to eject the drive tray. Pry and push out on the tabs securing the bezel to the optical drive and remove the bezel from the drive. The optical drive bezel has several tabs. That fit into slots on the front of the optical drive. To install a new optical drive, press the old optical drive bezel onto the new optical drive until the tabs are secured. There are 3 small pins on the green drive release latch that fit into 3 small holes on the side of the optical drive. Press the pins into their holes to secure the latch to the new optical drive. To replace the optical drive into the unit, slide the drive into its drive bay at the side of the PC until the green release latch snaps into place.
How to replace the wireless LAN board.
To remove the wireless LAN board, first remove the cable cover, the stand, and the rear cover.
Removal.
Carefully snap off the antenna connectors from the board. Pull the antennas out of the metal cable guides on the base pan above the wireless LAN board. Detach the Phillips No. 1 screw securing the board in place. The board will pop up. Pull the board out of its motherboard socket.
Replacement.
The wireless LAN board has a notch offset from the center that aligns over a key in its motherboard socket. To replace the wireless LAN board, angle the board into its motherboard socket at a 30-degree angle and press down. Hold it down while replacing the Phillips No. 1 screw. Reattach the antenna connectors to the board. The antennas are marked 1 and 2 and should be connected to the 1 and 2 stenciled ports on the wireless LAN board. Make sure the antennas are tucked into their metal cable guides above the wireless LAN board.
How to replace the M.2 drive.
To remove an M.2 drive if installed in the unit, first remove the cable cover, the stand, and the rear cover.
Removal.
Detach the Phillips No. 1 screw securing the M.2 drive to the unit. The board will pop up. Pull the M.2 drive out of its motherboard socket.
Replacement.
The M.2 drive has a notch offset from the center that aligns over a key in its motherboard socket. To replace the M.2 drive, angle the drive into its motherboard socket at a 30-degree angle and press down. Hold it down while replacing the Phillips No. 1 screw.
How to restore CMOS to factory settings.
CMOS factory settings should be restored as a first step before replacing the system motherboard. To restore CMOS factory settings, first remove the cable cover, the stand, and the rear cover.
Removal.
Remove the battery from the motherboard. Wait 30 seconds.
Replacement.
Replace the battery to the motherboard. CMOS factory settings are now reset. Note that you will now need to enter System BIOS and reset the clock in BIOS after this procedure.
How to replace the power button board.
To remove the power button board, first remove the cable cover, the stand, and the rear cover.
Removal.
Detach the Torx 15 screw that secures the power button board bracket to the panel assembly. partially pull out the power button board assembly. Detach the connector from the power button board to remove the power button assembly from the unit.
Replacement.
Attach the two Phillips No. 1 screws that secure the board to the bracket. Pull the board off of the bracket. To install the power button board, place the board onto its bracket. And secure with its two Phillips No. 1 screws. There are two small holes on the power button board bracket that align over locator pins on the panel assembly. To install the power button assembly, first reattach the connector to the power button board. Press the bracket holes over the pins to replace the board and bracket assembly. Secure the power button board assembly in the unit with its Torx 15 screw.
How to replace the fingerprint reader board.
To remove the fingerprint reader board, first remove the cable cover, the stand, and the rear cover.
Removal.
Detach the two Phillips No. 1 screws that secure the fingerprint reader board to the panel assembly. Pull the board partially out of the unit. Detach the connector from the board to fully remove the board from the unit.
Replacement.
To replace the fingerprint reader board, first reattach the connector to the board. Slide the board edge into its slot on the side of the unit and secure the board to the panel assembly with its two Phillips No. 1 screws.
How to replace the side audio jack.
To remove the side audio jack, first remove the cable cover, the stand, and the rear cover.
Removal.
Detach the side audio jack connector from the motherboard. Pull the connector out from under the optical drive cage and out of the cable guide on the optical drive cage. Detach the Torx 15 screw that secures the side audio jack to the unit and pull the side audio jack out of the unit.
Replacement.
To replace the side audio jack, align the audio jack ports into their cutouts on the side of the panel assembly. Secure the side audio jack board to the unit with its Torx 15 screw. Align the side audio jack cable into its cable guide on the optical drive cage. Route the cable under the corner of the optical drive cage and reconnect the cable to the motherboard.
How to replace the fan assembly.
To remove the fan assembly, first remove the cable cover, the stand, and the rear cover.
Removal.
Disconnect the fan connector to the motherboard. Detach the 5 Torx 15 screws that secure the fan assembly to the PC. Each screw location is indicated by a stencil of an arrow on the fan bracket. Pull the fan assembly out of the unit.
Replacement.
If replacing the fan, pull the fan connector out of the guide on the side of the fan bracket. Detach the 4 Torx 15 screws that secure the fan to the bracket. Pull the fan off of the bracket. To install a new system fan, align the screw holes on the fan over the standoffs on the bracket. Secure the fan to its bracket with 4 Torx 15 screws. Align the fan connector into the guide on the side of the fan bracket. To replace the fan assembly into the unit, place the fan assembly down over the motherboard until correctly seated. Secure the fan assembly in the unit with the 5 Torx 15 screws. Reattach the fan connector to the motherboard.
How to replace the heatsink.
To remove the heatsink, first remove the cable cover, the stand, the rear cover, and the fan assembly.
Removal.
Loosen the 4 captive Torx 15 screws over the CPU in the order indicated by the stencils on the heatsink. If there is a GPU, loosen the 2 Torx 15 screws over the GPU in their stenciled order. Detach the 2 Torx 15 screws near the radiator end of the heatsink. Carefully lift the heatsink out of the unit.
Replacement.
Before replacing the heatsink, first clean off the thermal grease from the CPU. Clean the thermal grease from the GPU if present in the unit. If you are replacing the same heatsink into the unit, clean the thermal grease from the heatsink. Apply new thermal grease or thermal pad to the CPU and GPU if present. Carefully align the heatsink back into the unit, positioning it carefully above the CPU and GPU if present. Tighten the Torx 15 screws for the heatsink over the CPU and GPU if present in the unit, in the order indicated by the stencils on the module. Replace the 2 Torx 15 screws near the radiator end of the module.
How to replace the CPU.
To remove the CPU, first remove the cable cover, the stand, the rear cover, the fan assembly, and the heatsink.
Removal.
Press down to release the CPU load lever from its retention tab, and pull the load lever and load plate away from the socket. Identify pin 1 on the socket by the mark on the corner of the socket stencil. Line up the pin 1 corner of the Intel CPU removal replacement tool over the socket. Press down on the plunger of the removal tool to pick up the CPU from the socket and remove the tool and the CPU from the motherboard.
Replacement.
To replace the CPU, first identify pin 1 position on the microprocessor by noting the yellow mark on the corner of the chip assembly. Make sure the Intel CPU staging tool side pins are set to the correct socket type for the CPU. For this unit, it is LGA1151. Place the CPU into the Intel CPU staging tool. When correctly inserted, the small notches on the side of the CPU should align over the side pins on the staging tool. Place the removal replacement tool over the stage, lining up the pin 1 triangles on each tool. Press down on the removal replacement tool to pick the CPU up from the stage. Align the removal replacement tool again to pin 1 on the motherboard CPU socket. Press the plunger on the removal replacement tool to release the CPU into the socket. Swing the load plate down. Lock the load lever under its retaining tab to secure the microprocessor into place.
How to replace the power supply.
To remove the power supply, first remove the cable cover, the stand, the rear cover, and the fan assembly.
Removal.
Disconnect the power supply connector to the motherboard. Note that the connector has a latch on the top edge that must be squeezed to remove the connector. Slide the AC inlet connector up to disengage it from the guides on the rear I/O bracket. Remove the AC inlet connector from the cable guides on the optical drive cage. Detach the 3 Torx 15 screws that secure the power supply to the unit. Pull the power supply off of the unit.
Replacement.
There is a small metal tab on the bottom edge of the power supply that aligns under a metal tab on the optical drive cage when the power supply is correctly installed. To replace the power supply, place the power supply back onto its standoffs, aligning the tab on the power supply under its tab on the optical drive cage. Secure the power supply to the unit with its 3 Torx 15 screws. Replace the AC inlet connector into its cable guides on the optical drive cage. Slide the AC inlet port into place at the center of the rear I/O bracket. Replace the power supply connector to the motherboard.
How to replace the cable pocket.
To remove the cable pocket, first remove the cable cover, the stand, and the rear cover.
Removal.
Detach the 2 Torx 15 screws that secure the cable pocket to the unit. Pull the cable pocket off of the unit.
Replacement.
To replace the cable pocket, align the cable pocket cutouts for the rear I/O back over the ports. Secure the cable pocket to the unit with its 2 Torx 15 screws.
How to replace the rear I/O bracket.
To remove the rear I/O bracket, first remove the cable cover, the stand, the rear cover, the fan assembly, and the cable pocket.
Removal.
Slide the AC inlet port up out of the bracket and press to the side. Detach the 5 Torx 15 screws that secure the rear I/O bracket to the unit. Each screw location is indicated by a stencil of an arrow with 3 circles inside. Slide the bracket down slightly and carefully pull the rear I/O bracket off of the unit.
Replacement.
To replace the rear I/O bracket, align the bracket slightly below its final location and carefully press the I/O cutouts over their motherboard ports. Secure the rear I/O bracket to the panel assembly with its 5 Torx 15 screws. Slide the AC inlet port back into the center of the rear I/O bracket.
How to replace the speakers.
To remove the speakers, first remove the cable cover, the stand, the rear cover, the fan assembly, the cable pocket, and the rear I/O bracket.
Removal.
Detach the speakers connector to the motherboard. Detach the 2 Torx 15 screws securing each of the speakers to the PC. Pull one speaker off of its standoffs and free the speaker's interconnector from the cable guides at the bottom of the base pan. Before removing the second speaker from its standoffs.
Replacement.
To replace the speakers, align the first speaker over its screw standoffs on the base pan. Tuck the speaker's interconnector behind its cable guides on the bottom of the PC. Place the second speaker into place on its standoffs. Secure the two speakers with their two Torx 15 screws. Reconnect the speaker's connector to the motherboard.
How to replace the motherboard.
To remove the motherboard, first remove the cable cover, the stand, the rear cover, the fan assembly, the cable pocket, the rear I.O. bracket, the hard drive cage, and the optical drive. Remove system memory, the wireless LAN board, an M.2 drive if installed in the unit, the heatsink, and the CPU from the motherboard.
Removal.
When removing the CPU, install a socket cover on the load plate window before replacing the load plate over the socket. Detach all system connectors to the motherboard. Remove the 9 Torx 15 screws securing the motherboard to the base pan in the order indicated by the stencils on the motherboard. Carefully tip up the top edge of the motherboard and lift the motherboard off of the PC. Place the motherboard in an anti-static bag.
Replacement.
The motherboard USB ports on the bottom of the motherboard align under a small metal tab on the PC. To replace the motherboard, carefully align the USB ports under the tab and place the motherboard down onto its standoffs, clearing any connectors away from the sides of the board. Replace the 9 Torx 15 screws to secure the motherboard to the base pan in the order indicated by the stencils on the motherboard. Reattach all system connectors to the board.
How to replace the webcam assembly. Before you begin, remove the cable cover, the stand, the rear cover, the webcam, the fan assembly,
and the heatsink.
Removal. Detach the 4 P1 Phillips head screws that secure the webcam assembly to the base pan. Lift the webcam assembly off of the base pan. Replacement. Place the webcam assembly back onto the base pan. Secure the webcam assembly to the base pan with 4 P1 Phillips head screws. How to separate the base pan assembly from the panel assembly.
To separate the base pan assembly from the panel assembly, first remove the cable cover, the stand, the rear cover, the fan assembly, and the heatsink. Remove the webcam plastic cover, the cable pocket, and the optical drive.
Removal.
Partially remove the side audio jack. Partially remove the power button board assembly. Detach the LVDS connector from the motherboard. You will need to pop up system memory modules to access the tape covering the connector. Press the memory modules back down after detaching the LVDS connector. Detach the backlight connector from the motherboard. Remove the backlight cable from the cable guides leading to the backlight connector on the panel. Remove the tape securing the backlight cable to the base pan. Detach the 12 Phillips #2 screws that secure the base pan to the panel assembly. Each screw location is marked by a stencil of an arrow with 4 circles inside. Carefully pull the base pan assembly off of the panel, pushing the LVDS cable down through its access hole.
Replacement.
To replace the base pan to the panel assembly, first have the panel assembly face down on the work surface. There are several square posts on the top of the middle frame that align into cutouts on the base panel assembly. To replace the base pan to the middle frame and panel assembly, align the top left cutouts over and against their posts. Feed the LVDS cable up through its access hole. And gently press the base pan into place over the panel, being careful not to trap the panel backlight cable. Secure the base pan to the panel assembly with the 12 Phillips #2 screws. Place the panel backlight cable into its cable guides and tape it down to the base pan. Reattach the backlight cable to the motherboard. Pop up system memory modules, and reattach and tape down the LVDS cable to the motherboard. Note the backlight cable should be routed under the LVDS cable. Press the memory modules back down into place. Replace the power button board. Replace the side audio jack.
How to replace the wireless LAN antennas. Before you begin, remove the cable cover, the stand, the webcam, the rear cover, the fan assembly, the heatsink, and the power supply. Remove the webcam assembly, the cable pocket, and the optical drive. Separate the base pan assembly from the middle frame and panel assembly. Removal. Gently detach the antenna connectors from the wireless LAN board. Unscrew the P1 Phillips head screw that secures the left antenna and its cable to the base pan. Unscrew the P1 Phillips head screw that secures the right antenna and its cable to the base pan. Peel back and remove the foil tape that secures the left antenna. And the right antenna. Carefully guide the left and right antenna cables through the access hole in the base pan. Turn the base pan over and route each antenna cable out of the access hole and out of the cable guides. Turn the base pan back over and gently detach the antennas from the metal tabs of the base pan to which they are adhered. Replacement. To replace the wireless LAN antennas, align the left antenna to the screw hole in the metal tab of the base pan. Press down firmly on the foil tape to adhere the left antenna to the top of the base pan, and then replace the P1 Phillips head screw to secure the left antenna. Route the left antenna cable to the underneath of the base pan. Align the right antenna to the screw hole in the metal tab of the basepan. Press down firmly on the foil tape to adhere the right antenna to the top of the basepan, and then replace the P1 Phillips head screw to secure it. Route the right antenna cable through the access hole to the underneath of the basepan. Turn the basepan over and route the right antenna cable through the cable guides along the underneath of the basepan before gently pushing it through the access hole to the top of the basepan. Gently push the left antenna cable through the same access hole to the top of the basepan and turn the basepan over. Route the antenna cables along the cable guide. Reattach the antenna connectors to the wireless LAN board. The antennas are marked 1 and 2 and should be connected to the 1 and 2 stenciled ports on the wireless LAN board. How to replace the LCD panel middle frame.
To replace the LCD panel or middle frame, first remove the cable cover, the stand, the rear cover, the fan assembly, and the heatsink. Remove the webcam plastic cover and the cable pocket and the optical drive. Separate the basepan assembly from the middle frame and panel assembly.
Removal.
Remove the middle frame from the panel by lifting up the top edge of the middle frame, sliding the frame down slightly, and pulling it away from the panel. If replacing the LCD panel, remove the tape covering the LVDS connector and disconnect the LVDS cable from the panel. Reserve the LVDS cable.
Replacement.
To install a new LCD panel kit, attach the included new backlight cable to the LCD panel. Connect the reserved LVDS cable to the panel and tape it down. To replace the middle frame to the panel assembly, align the top edge of the speaker grill over the bottom of the front panel. Slide the middle frame up and place it down until it is correctly seated on the panel.